She stood up with a glass of Chardonnay in her hand and a fake-ass smile that I'd seen 1,000 times before. Her voice wavered just enough to draw attention, but not so much that anyone would think something was wrong. That was her specialty, sounding like everything was fine, right up until the second she set fire to the room. We were at this overpriced banquet hall in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. My parents' 50th wedding anniversary. White tablecloths, silver chafing dishes, stupid little autumn centerpieces with fake pumpkins and glitter leaves. All of it rented, all of it catered, and all of it carefully planned by my wife, Danielle. She tapped her glass twice. "Hi, everyone," she said, all breathy and emotional. "I just wanted to say how grateful I am to be part of this family. You've all welcomed me with open arms since the day I married Drew, and She looked down, like she was composing herself. Then she looked right at me. "I can't lie anymore. I'm in love with someone else." Silence. A slow, creeping silence like when a storm's coming and you're the only one who hears it. Then she turned her head. She looked at my brother. Not the cousin. Not a friend. Not a neighbor. My younger brother, Caleb, sitting 3 seats over in a tailored suit he definitely couldn't afford. "I'm in love with Caleb," she said. "We didn't mean for it to happen, but it did." You ever watch a room exhale at the same time? Plates stopped clinking. Forks froze halfway to mouths. My mom's eyes welled up before her brain could even process the words. Caleb didn't say a word, just stared at his glass like it had answers. I reached under the table, picked up a manila envelope, and set it down next to my plate. "Thanks for telling me," I said. I stood up, slid the envelope across the table toward Caleb. "Inside are the buyout terms for your half of the dealership. 3 appraisals, full payout in 60 days, or you're out by force." Danielle blinked at me. "What?" I looked at her, calm as hell. "That's your toast? Here's mine. I'm done with both of you." My dad dropped his fork. My mom clutched her pearls like a bad movie. Caleb reached for the envelope with a shaking hand. Danielle tried to speak again, but I was already pulling out my chair. "Enjoy dinner," I said. "You'll need the carbs. It's gonna be a long couple months." And with that, I walked straight out of the banquet hall and into the cold November air. I didn't drive straight home that night. I pulled into the Wawa parking lot off Route 70 and just sat there, lights off, letting the heat blast while my hands finally stopped shaking. But here's the thing, I wasn't shocked. I wasn't even surprised. I'd known for a while. That night at the banquet, that was just the delivery. It started 3 months earlier on a Thursday. Danielle was in the shower. I was looking for the Spotify playlist we'd used at a cookout, and her iPad was right there on the kitchen counter. The screen lit up with a text. Not one of those obvious ones. It said, "Still thinking about that thing you said in the elevator." I almost left it alone. Almost. But I opened the messages. That was the first time I saw Caleb Redhart. Inside, weeks of messages. Inside jokes. "I miss US," her saying she wished she'd met him first. Him telling her she was wasted on a boring guy like me. I put the iPad down and walked outside before I threw it across the kitchen. Next day, I checked our joint credit card statement. There were 2 back-to-back charges in Atlantic City, one for a hotel, one for a spa. I'd been in Harrisburg for a dealership conference. She'd told me she was going to a girls' night at her friend Lindsay's. Right? I didn't confront her. I didn't scream. I played the long game. First call I made was to a lawyer named Scott Bledsoe. Mid-40s, no nonsense. Came recommended by a former client of mine. He listened, asked 3 questions, then said, "Do not tip your hand. Let me work while you play it cool." Second call was to a business consultant, Carla, who used to run appraisals for Midas franchises. I told her I wanted a valuation on the used car dealership, discreetly. She knew how to set up a quiet internal audit. Within 2 weeks, she had the numbers. Scott got me in touch with a private counselor named Jenna, licensed, experienced, and, most importantly, not connected to any of Danielle's circles. I told Danielle we should try couples therapy. She agreed, all wide-eyed like she didn't know what was going on. "Do you feel distant from me lately?" she asked on the drive to our first session. "No," I said, looking straight out the windshield. Just feel like we've been missing something. We went every Thursday at 6. And every Thursday she lied. Jenna would ask, "Is there anything either of you feels the other doesn't know?" Danielle would smile. "Nope. I think we've been communicating better than ever." And every time Jenna took notes, court admissible, time-stamped, signed after each session. I didn't even need her to admit the affair. I just needed her to pretend she wasn't in one. I had a gut feeling they'd try to flip the story if it ever got out. Make me look unstable, bitter, maybe even violent. Danielle's smart, but she plays dirty. And Caleb? That dude can cry on cue if it gets him out of trouble. I've watched him fake injuries during pickup basketball games. So I gave them a stage. A big, expensive public stage. One they'd never see coming. The anniversary banquet had been Danielle's idea, which made it even better. I paid the deposit, helped pick the menu, even smiled through the taste testings. I acted normal, loving, predictable. In the meantime, I moved assets into protected accounts, transferred my truck title, made copies of every single financial record we had. Carla drafted early buyout terms for Caleb's stake in the business, locked in by 3 independent appraisers, all signed and time-stamped. Scott sent me a process server dressed like a Pilates instructor to serve Danielle's divorce papers the moment I gave the green light. The guy even wore leggings and carried a yoga mat. He'd already been to her class twice. She smiled at him both times. None of this was impulsive. None of it emotional. It was chess. Every lie they told, I just took notes and let them keep playing. By the time she stood up at that banquet and said she was in love with my brother, the game was already over. They just hadn't figured it out yet. I didn't make it 5 steps toward the door before I heard her heels clicking after me. "Drew, wait!" Danielle's voice cracked. I stopped, turned around just in time to watch Caleb's wife, Megan, shove her chair back so hard it nearly tipped. Her face had gone pale and hard. She didn't say a word, just stared at Caleb for 2 full seconds, then walked straight out of the room, clutching her purse like a weapon. The door slammed behind her. My mother broke down in a sob loud enough to echo off the chandelier. She reached across the table like she could physically hold the family together if she just stretched far enough. My dad looked like someone had sucker punched him through his windpipe. He hadn't moved since Danielle's little confession. I walked back to the table, took the envelope, and set it down directly in front of Caleb. He didn't touch it. "It's all in there," I said. 3 independent appraisals certified by Carla Turner. You get a 60-day window to respond or I'll move forward with a forced buyout. Your choice. He finally looked at me. "You serious?" "As cancer," I said. Danielle stepped closer. "We didn't mean for it to happen." I cut her off. "You're late on that speech. We're already done." She blinked like she hadn't heard me right. "You mean divorce?" "Already filed." I pulled out a folded piece of paper from my inside jacket pocket and tapped it once. "You remember that guy from your Pilates class with the yoga mat and the terrible posture?" "Yeah." "That was your process server." There were gasps. My cousin Aaron actually choked on his roll. Danielle's mouth hung open. You blindsided me?" "No," I said. "You just weren't paying attention." I turned back to Caleb. "Your ownership stake in the dealership is going to be worthless if you drag your feet. Lawyers are ready. So is the bank. Don't test me." He reached for the envelope, but I saw his hand shaking. "Good." Danielle tried again. "You blindsided me with fake therapy sessions." "They weren't fake," I snapped. "I showed up. I answered every question. You lied. On record. Every time. Jenna's documented the entire thing. I've got signed session notes, timestamps, and summaries ready for court." Her hands dropped to her sides like someone had unplugged her. "And the text messages," I added, "the spa receipts, the hotel bills while I was out of town. Yeah, those are packaged up too." My mom sobbed harder. "Why would you do this tonight?" I looked right at her. "Because it's the only time I knew they wouldn't lie or run. I needed everyone here to see it, to hear it, so there'd be no rewriting the story later." She covered her face and leaned into my dad. He didn't move. just sat there like his soul had slipped out the back door with Megan. Drew, Danielle said again, weak now. This doesn't have to end ugly. I stared her down. It already did. I'm just cleaning it up. Then I turned and looked at the room. My aunts, my uncles, my cousins, all frozen, all staring like they didn't know what side to stand on. So I made it easy. I'm done, I said. With her. With him. With pretending everything's fine. Anyone who wants to talk to me can call. Everyone else can enjoy dessert and go to hell. I walked out the door without looking back. The night air hit me in the face like a slap, cold and clean. I didn't run. I didn't cry. I just walked to my truck, got in, and drove home. Calm, steady, and free for the first time in months. I pulled into the driveway around 8 the next morning. I'd stopped for coffee on the way back from the lawyer's office. Keys in one hand, bagel in the other, calm as ever. She was already on the porch, banging on the door like she was locked out of her own life, which at that point she was. I parked slow, didn't say anything, just sat in the truck, sipping my coffee while the Ring camera caught everything in crystal clear HD. Danielle whipped around the second she saw me. You changed the locks? I got out, set my cup on the hood. Yep. You don't have the right. Actually, I said, pulling out a printed copy of the court paperwork. I do. She stormed down the steps toward me. You can't just throw me out like garbage, Drew. This is my house too. I didn't flinch. And you're trespassing. She laughed. A high, ugly sound. You're out of your mind. I held the papers out. Filed. Emergency order. You were served yesterday. You're not on the deed. And I paid for this place before we got married. The locks were changed at 6 a.m. And yes, it's legal. She looked up at the Ring camera, saw the blue light glowing. Her expression cracked for half a second. Then the screaming started. This is abuse. You're abusing me. He's abusing me. I hit the button on the app. Danielle, stop yelling. You're trespassing. I'm calling the police. Call them, she screamed. I want you to. So I did. She paced back and forth on the lawn like a lunatic. Hair messy, makeup smeared from last night. Every few minutes she'd yell, you don't get to erase me. Or, you're gonna regret this. While I waited, I glanced up the street and saw a black Dodge Ram idling at the corner. Caleb. He wasn't even trying to hide. Sitting there like a coward, engine running, just watching her melt down while he stayed parked in his guilt. 2 patrol cars showed up within 10 minutes. I met them at the curb. That's her, I said. I've got paperwork, ring footage, and a lawyer on standby. One of the officers approached Danielle. She pointed wildly at me, crying now. He locked me out. He blindsided me with a divorce. He's unhinged. The cop nodded like he was listening, then walked over to me. Mind if I take a look? I handed him the documents, plus a flash drive with the therapy logs, text messages, and proof of residency. He scanned it all, then looked back at Danielle. Ma'am, I'm gonna have to ask you to leave the property. Her mouth dropped open. What? I live here. The second officer stepped in. Not according to this. Your name's not on the title. You were served legally. You need to go. She turned back to the truck. Caleb still hadn't moved. Just stared straight ahead like if he didn't make eye contact, it wouldn't be his problem. Danielle looked at him, waiting, hoping maybe he didn't even open the door. Fine, she snapped, grabbing her purse off the porch rail. But this isn't over. I said nothing, just picked up my coffee again and watched her get into Caleb's truck like a wet cat. Still crying, still yelling, but with less and less steam. The Ram rolled away slow, never speeding, never stopping. Once they were gone, one of the cops turned to me. You did this by the book, he said. Had to, I told him. They weren't gonna play fair, so I didn't leave room for games. He gave a half smile, nodded, and left. I walked back inside, locked the door, and finally finished my damn bagel. About 2 hours after Danielle left with Caleb, my phone lit up with a wall of texts, all from numbers I recognized. Her friends, a couple cousins, one of my aunts. Even a guy from church I hadn't spoken to in over a year. Stuff like, "You didn't have to humiliate her in front of everyone. This isn't who I thought you were. Marriage takes work. You didn't try hard enough. She said you shut her out emotionally." I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I copied one message, short, clean, all facts, and sent it to each person. She had a months-long affair with my brother. Lied in counseling. Used joint funds for private trips. Evidence available upon request. Some read it and went silent. Some doubled down. Danielle's best friend, Tracy, hit back with, "People cheat when they're emotionally neglected. That's on you too." I blocked her. A cousin said, "Yeah, but putting her on blast in front of everyone? That was cold." I replied, "She made the announcement. I brought the consequences. We good or not?" He left me on read. I didn't care. My inbox was a war zone, but I wasn't losing sleep over people who hadn't asked me a single question before taking sides. Then came the harder one. My mom. She called first. I let it go to voicemail. She followed up with a text. "Danielle told me she felt unloved for years, that you pushed her away emotionally. I'm trying to understand what happened." I took a breath, stared at the screen for a long time. Then I sat down and forwarded her the full digital file, a neat little package my lawyer's assistant had helped organize. It had screenshots of the texts, counseling logs, credit card statements, hotel confirmations with matching dates to her girls' nights, and even a timeline of how long I'd kept quiet to avoid causing more damage. I added one message to the top. "Mom, I loved her. I fought for it. She threw it away. If you want the truth, it's all right here." She didn't respond that night. Didn't respond the next day either. On the third day, my dad showed up at the house unannounced. He knocked once, no yelling, no drama. I opened the door and he just stood there in his old Eagles jacket, holding a six-pack of Rolling Rock. "I saw everything," he said. "Your mom's been crying for 2 days, but she read it all. She knows now." He stepped inside without waiting for an invite, walked to the kitchen, and cracked a beer. "She'll come around," he said, sitting down. "She's just not built for things falling apart." I sat across from him. "Neither was I." He gave a dry laugh. "Well, you sure fooled me." We drank in silence for a while. No talking. Just sitting in the wreckage. Two men who'd both been married long enough to know how fast love could turn into something else. Over the next week, the fracture lines spread. Some relatives went quiet, like they didn't want to pick sides, so they just stopped calling. Others reached out with half-assed sympathy. "Hope you're okay. Let me know if you need anything." I didn't bother replying. And then there were the ones who chose her, fully, loudly, blindly. The "she's still family" crowd. They got blocked, no explanations. You stab someone and expect them to sit next to you at Thanksgiving? Not happening. By the end of that week, my phone was quieter. Not empty, just quieter. And I liked it better that way. I was in the middle of updating payroll when my lawyer, Scott, called me with that tone in his voice, the one that meant I needed to sit down. "Your brother's lawyer just filed an emergency motion to block the buyout," he said. "He's claiming you used emotional duress to force his signature." I almost laughed. Emotional duress? He slept with my wife. Scott didn't laugh. "Yeah, well, apparently that part's not in the court filing." I leaned back in my chair. "So what's their angle?" "They're saying you orchestrated the public reveal to damage his reputation and pressure him into signing." "He signed it voluntarily," I said, "in front of 2 witnesses and a notary." "Exactly," Scott replied, "which is why we're not sweating it. I'm filing our response now. Full documentation of the 3 independent valuations, witness affidavits, the video footage from the banquet, and a timeline that shows he had the documents for 48 hours before he signed." I nodded. "Good. Let him dig the hole." That same week, Danielle's lawyer came out swinging. She claimed she was owed half the dealership, called it marital property, even though she was never on paper. She also requested alimony, retroactive support, and an audit of my unreported assets. Scott sent her a package so thick it needed a hard drive. Included were the therapy session logs showing she denied any marital issues under oath, Her own text messages to Caleb timestamped during our marriage. Credit card statements showing she spent joint funds on their little hotel getaways. And proof the business was structured as a sole proprietorship before we ever said, "I do." She fired back by playing the emotional neglect card again. Scott added the ring footage of her screaming outside my house and the police report confirming she'd been legally removed from the property. "Let her keep digging," Scott said. "At this rate, the judge might sanction her for wasting time." While that circus played out, Megan, Caleb's now ex, filed for divorce. And she did not go quietly. Within 24 hours, she'd blown up Facebook with a 5-paragraph post titled, "My husband slept with my brother-in-law's wife. Here's what you should know." It went viral, at least in South Jersey terms. Family, friends, old classmates, co-workers, everybody saw it. She didn't pull punches, either. She named names, dates, locations. She even attached screenshots of her own messages Danielle had sent her during girls' nights, thanking her for being cool and understanding. But the real bomb dropped 3 days later. Megan's lawyer sent Scott a folder marked "Business Expense Fraud." Turns out, Caleb had been using the dealership's business card to cover his affair. Hotel stays coded as out-of-state vehicle scouting. Spa treatments logged as client meetings. Even gas and fake mileage logs for cars he never actually drove. Scott nearly fell out of his chair. "Your brother committed fraud while sleeping with your wife," he said. "That's rare dedication." I handed everything over: financials, receipts, tracking logs, emails. Even the mileage records I'd kept from our fleet software that contradicted his trips. We filed a formal complaint with the Small Business Bureau, then sent Caleb's lawyer a notice of breach. He'd violated his fiduciary duties as a co-owner. Now he was at risk of losing his cut entirely, court or not. The next time I saw Caleb in person, it was at the mediation table. He looked rough, eyes bagged, hair messy, suit 2 sizes too big. He didn't speak a word. His lawyer did all the talking. Tried to float a reduced buyout, said Caleb was under emotional stress, and wanted to reach an amicable conclusion. Scott shut it down in under 2 minutes. "We already had an agreement. He broke it. He committed business fraud. We're sticking to the original terms, and if he wants to escalate, we'll go to court." Caleb didn't even look at me. He just stared at the table, shoulders sunk, hands trembling slightly. Danielle wasn't at the meeting. She was still trying to stall discovery by claiming emotional trauma and requesting extensions. The judge denied the request. Her lawyer submitted one more Hail Mary, said Danielle had given up her career to support Drew's business and deserved compensation. Scott responded with a screen grab from her LinkedIn, freelance digital marketing consultant, part-time since 2017. The judge saw it and shook his head. It was one move after another, one lie followed by proof, followed by silence. They kept swinging, but everything they threw at me came up short. It was a Friday night, 2 weeks after the last court hearing. My cousin Lindsay had invited a handful of us over for dinner. Nothing big, just pot roast and drinks in her backyard in Medford. I almost didn't go, but I figured I'd spent enough time avoiding people. And she promised it was just close family, no drama, which, in hindsight, should have tipped me off. Dinner was halfway done when I noticed Caleb walking up the driveway. He wasn't invited. I could tell by the way Lindsay's husband stiffened at the grill, and my aunt suddenly got real interested in her mashed potatoes. He didn't make eye contact with anyone, just walked over to my side of the table and said, "Can we talk?" I didn't answer right away. He looked thinner than usual, dark bags under his eyes, dressed like he'd just come from work, which I knew he hadn't. "Garage," I said finally. "Let's go." We stepped inside. It was musty and hot, smelled like gasoline and old pine mulch. Lindsay's husband used it more for storage than tools. Caleb leaned against the wall, arms folded. "Look, man, I'm not here to fight." "Good," I said, "because I'm done fighting." He looked at the floor. "You're really going through with this? Forcing me out completely?" "It's already in motion," I said. 60 days left on the clock. He looked up, jaw clenched. "You're gonna ruin me." "No," I said. "You did that all on your own." He shook his head. "Come on, Drew. You know how this plays. We're brothers. People screw up. We move past it. You slept with my wife, I said flat. Repeatedly. While I paid your salary and helped cover your mortgage. There's no moving past that. I was messed up, all right? He said. Megan and I were already circling the drain. Danielle was just there. I stayed quiet. He stepped closer. You're really gonna burn everything down over one mistake? One, I said. You think this was one mistake? He dropped the calm tone fast. You think you're so above it all now, huh? Like you've never screwed anyone over in your life. I never touched your wife, I said. I never lied to your face while taking your money. He swallowed hard. So what? You just cut me out and walk away? Yep. He stared at me, like he couldn't believe I wasn't cracking. Then he said it. We're family. I nodded slowly. You chose my wife, Caleb. This is me choosing peace. His eyes flickered. Then he shoved me. Both hands quick and stupid. I didn't move, didn't hit back. I just took a step back and looked him dead in the eye. That it? I said. He stood there breathing heavy, like he expected me to charge him. But I didn't. I turned, opened the garage door, and walked out into the yard. Everyone had gone quiet, they knew. I didn't say a word to anyone. Just grabbed my keys from the patio table and left without finishing my drink. As I drove home, windows down, hands steady on the wheel, one thing hit me crystal clear. That shove? That was the final nail. There was nothing left to fix. Caleb wasn't my brother anymore. Danielle wasn't my wife. That entire version of my life, the dealership, the double dates, the backyard barbecues, it was dead. And for the first time, I didn't want it back. 2 weeks after the garage, Caleb's lawyer folded. Scott called me mid-morning. He's signing. They know they can't win. Everything locked in? I asked. Signed, sealed, and notarized. Transfer of ownership starts Monday. Just like that, it was mine. No more partnership. No more shared title. No more Caleb screwing up inventory counts, sneaking off early, or charging lap dances to the business card under client entertainment. The dealership was finally clean. Danielle's case dragged a little longer. She kept changing lawyers, like the next one might find a magical loophole in New Jersey divorce law that rewarded cheating with payouts. They didn't. Her last shot was a courtroom Hail Mary. Claimed emotional abuse, career suppression, and financial manipulation. She said I controlled her with money and isolated her emotionally. Scott stood up calm and bored, handed the judge a color-coded binder with dates, therapy logs, direct quotes, text messages, and financial records. The judge skimmed it for maybe 5 minutes before closing the file and leaning forward. Mrs. Parker, he said, you were never legally attached to the business. You spent joint money on extramarital affairs. And your own session notes indicate no signs of abuse or suppression. She tried to interrupt. He shut her down cold. Sit down. This is over. She didn't take it well. Outside the courtroom, she came at me loud, voice echoing off the marble. You trapped me. You betrayed me. I didn't say a word. I gave you everything. Her new lawyer tugged her arm, trying to calm her down. She yanked free, tears smearing down her cheeks. You turned everyone against me. You made me look like a monster. I looked her right in the eyes and said, you did that part yourself. The bailiff stepped between us before she could fire off another tantrum. I kept walking. Behind me, I heard her yell something about justice, about how I'd ruined her future. The door shut before I heard the rest. Caleb's case wrapped the same week. Megan got the house and most of their joint assets. She even got the golden retriever. He didn't fight, just signed what he had to and left without saying a word. I heard he was crashing in a buddy's basement in Pennsauken, picking up odd jobs while trying to get hired at a different dealership. One that didn't know his history. Me? I kept my house, kept my business, kept my truck. Every piece of the life I built. Mine again. No drama. No split titles. No shared checking accounts. No fake counseling smiles. Peace. That was the word that hit me as I locked up the dealership that Friday night. Keys jingling in my hand. parking lot empty under the streetlights. I had peace. Not revenge. Not closure. Just quiet. The kind of quiet you earn. A year later, I stood in the middle of my dealership's new showroom, staring at the glossy red paint on a freshly detailed 21 Grand Cherokee. There was classic rock playing over the speakers. New banners hung overhead with our updated logo. Clean, modern, bold. No more fading decals or sagging balloons. We looked like we belonged on a billboard now. Business was booming. I'd hired a new co-manager, Gina, ex-military, sharp as hell, zero tolerance for bullshit. We cleaned up operations, rotated out all the dead inventory, and started offering custom financing packages. Sales went up 30%. We just closed out our best quarter since opening the doors. Caleb was gone. I heard he moved to North Carolina, Wilmington, I think. Working under someone else at a chain lot, last I heard. No ownership. No say in anything. Just a guy punching a clock, trying to pretend his name didn't mean anything. Danielle? She worked at a boutique in the mall. One of those trendy little shops that sold overpriced candles and knockoff bags. A mutual friend said she lived in a one-bedroom apartment above a nail salon. Claimed she was starting over. Claimed she was working on herself. She tried reaching out once, sent an email. Just a few lines. "I'm sorry. I miss you. I didn't know what I had." I didn't answer. Blocked her. Same as before. I wasn't angry. Just done. Some families stayed away. No texts. No calls. Holidays came and went with empty chairs and awkward group messages that no one replied to. I didn't chase anyone. Others circled back. My Aunt Lori came over one Saturday with a pie and a half apology. "I didn't know what to believe," she said. "But I read everything. And I'm sorry I didn't ask you first." I told her we were good. My cousin Brent, the one who ghosted me after the banquet, showed up at the dealership with his son and asked if I could help him find a safe first car. I shook his hand and walked him through the lot like nothing happened. I didn't forget, but I didn't hold it either. That was the difference now. I used to think betrayal was about love, about someone breaking your heart. But it's not. It's about lies. The kind they look you in the face and tell while your whole life's in their hands. That's what breaks you. Not the cheating, not the leaving, the pretending. I stopped asking why a long time ago. There's no answer that matters. People lie because they want to, because it's easy, because they think they'll get away with it. But when the dust settles, all that's left is truth. And I finally had mine. I started dating again. Nothing serious, nothing rushed. Just a few dinners here and there. Good conversations, a couple laughs, no pressure. I didn't bring up the past unless they asked. And even then, I kept it short. I wasn't looking to prove anything. I just wanted peace. One woman, Kelly, she runs a dog rescue in Morristown. We've gone out a few times. She's calm, funny, doesn't talk to hear herself speak. I like that. We're taking it slow. Some days I still think back to that night at the banquet hall. Not with anger, just with clarity. I see the table, the white linen, the candles flickering. I see Danielle raising her glass. I see Caleb shifting in his seat, sweaty and nervous, thinking I didn't know. But I did. I knew everything. And now, I don't feel hate. I don't feel regret. Just air in my lungs, money in the bank, and peace in my damn house. Thanksgiving came around again, and this time the table was smaller, quieter too. Just a few close friends, my dad, and a spread that could have fed twice as many people. No banquet hall. No name cards. Just paper plates, cold beer, and too much stuffing. We watched the game, swapped stories, laughed more than we had any right to. No one brought up last year. They didn't have to. Kelly showed up later with pumpkin pie and her dog, Murphy, who immediately tried to climb on the couch like he paid rent. She leaned in and kissed my cheek. "Smells amazing in here." "Don't let it fool you," I said. "I bought half this stuff from Wegmans." She laughed. "Smart man." Later, while everyone was lounging around with food comas and second helpings, I slipped outside for a breath of air. The night was cold and clear, just like it had been a year ago. I stepped off the porch and looked across the driveway at my truck. Same one I drove away in that night. The tires were newer, the bed was clean, but it still held the memory. I remembered gripping the wheel, trying to keep my hands steady while everything around me burned. My marriage, my business, half my damn family. But I'd walked through it. I didn't just leave a marriage or a business. I left behind the version of me who let people get away with things. The version who stayed quiet to keep the peace, even when it was fake. I wasn't that guy anymore. I didn't forgive them, not because I was bitter, just because they didn't matter anymore. Not in my story. Not in my life. They got their chapter. I closed the book. Kelly stepped out behind me, pie container in one hand, Murphy trailing close. You good? I looked back at her, nodded. Yeah, just thinking. She smiled. Dangerous habit. Not tonight, I said. I took one last look at the truck, then turned back toward the house. The door was open. The people inside were laughing. I built something better from the mess. That's enough.